Hello, everybody, and welcome to this conversation with Luna Vestergaard. Luna, I've been following her for a couple of years now, and just peeking into her life. She has been traveling around with her, how many kids? 3, 4?
Well, I have 4 kids, but I've actually only really been traveling with 3, and now I'm down to 2. Yeah, because the oldest is like really old. I mean, no, she's not really old, but she's much older than the others. And she actually left home before we really started like traveling a lot. So
yeah. And you have this huge dog too, and you're traveling in just a regular car, and you've been just going around many years, and you're doing something that I have like I took that because it was easier for me. You have something called, you're doing something called unschooling, and we took our kids out of school, and everyone is always asking us, so are you homeschooling the kids? And I said, well, not really. There's this concept called unschooling where you do nothing, and I've just like adopted that, but I don't know what to answer people except that you cannot stop learning.
Yeah, and everyone is so worried about the education of the children, because we've been heavily indoctrinated with putting our children into the school system, and I don't think they're learning anything in the school system that's useful. So what is unschooling, and what's your take on everything, and where are you kids now,
and why
and
oh my god, yeah. So how many hours do we have for the interview? Because it can become really long. No, that's just half a joke. So I think it's funny that you would say, there's this thing called unschooling, and you don't do anything, and so that's easy. And because like I think that is sort of a common misconception. I'm not saying you have a misconception, but that in the broader world, there's this misconception that unschooling is like hands-off kind of thing, just going, oh well, just don't care, we just don't do anything, and the thing is, I think on a certain level, yeah, that is kind of what you do. You just let go of the expectations, you let go of like arbitrary like demands on the children in terms of learning. You let go of stressing about the whole thing, thinking about learning all the time and results and where you're going to end up. And so there's a lot of things that you let go of, and that you just don't do anything because those things aren't useful anyway, right? So but then at the same time, obviously, to me, unschooling is not just, it's not doing nothing. Of course, it's rather doing all sorts of things, but just doing them just because you love them, just because you want to do them, just because that's what kind of presents itself that day or that week or whatever. So to me, it's kind of like just living life. Right? It's just unschooling is just life. That's all. It's just living your life, and probably, I guess, just focusing on being happy, being like thriving, doing what you want to do, because when you do what you want to do, you're happy. And when you're happy, you feel good, and that's when you learn the best anyway, right? That's when you like soak up everything from the world, and you'll be the best version of yourself. Does that make sense? But that's kind of how I see it in terms of the whole like doing nothing angle.
Yeah, because now our daughter, she's special needs, and well, I don't have to teach her anything. Well, but she comes to us and asks us to teach her something, how to write a certain letter, or a number, or how to say a word in another language, right? And you wouldn't learn that in a special needs school, especially with her condition. And our son, he's 15, and he should be finishing school right now, actually, but he's not. But he's here, and we cannot tell him anything that he doesn't know.
Yeah, like every time we're trying to show him something, he's like, I already know that. I've seen that. This is how it is. Or like,
Yeah.
Or he'll tell us some obscure fact about something. It's like, oh, I didn't know that. So,
yeah.
So
when we were in Italy last year, and I was wondering, so can you eat an olive directly from the tree? And he was like, no, Mom, it will taste like horrible. There's only this short period of time where you can harvest the olives, and you need to do it in a specific way, and then you do this and that. I'm like, how do you know this? Yeah, I saw a post about it some years ago or something like that. That's what. And he's learning Japanese on Duolingo now.
And has been doing it for almost a year.
Yeah. But he's worried that if he goes back to school, because he wants to be with his friend, he doesn't want to be in school because it's too stressful. He wants to be with his friend. So if he does that, there's a lot of expectations he needs to live up to, right? And he thinks that he can't do that. He cannot analyze a text, and he cannot do that kind of math, and so on and so forth. But I said to him, if you want to go back to school, we just ask them what they will expect of you, and then you can learn it in like a day or so, right? It shouldn't be that difficult.
And like homework is like, and first time we talked to him about like, so if he had to go back to homework, he's like, did you know that homework was invented as a punishment? He tells us. So homework has never been meant to teach anybody something. It was a punishment.
Well, I think what's so great about unschooling really is that because you can just focus on living life. So that means that what you learn is like really embedded in your real actual life. So you will learn the things that you need in your life, and you won't have, because that's another thing that you let go of in the philosophy of unschooling is like I said in the beginning, the arbitrary demands and like the expectations. So the school system is built on this. It's built on like how would you say, a predefined amount of knowledge and of skills, something that everybody has to learn in the same way at the same time, like at the same age, right? And it's like, this is what you need to learn. This is what is important. This is what is good. That is how the school system thinks, that we have this specific amount of knowledge and skills. Whereas in unschooling, you kind of just throw all that away, that idea away, and you go, well, what is really important to someone? What's important to me? Well, that's whatever I find interesting and fun and useful in my life, which obviously won't be the same as you guys. You guys will have other stuff. I mean, there might be things that are the same, but it's really different from person to person. So when you unschool and you just live your life and you just take learning as it pops up, as it comes up, obviously it's going to be completely tailored to you. So I also think that's something that's really hard for a lot of people to wrap their minds around, is that, oh my God, we're not all going to end up with the same knowledge. We're not all going to be the same. You know, everyone's going to be different. And like society has a problem with that, has a problem with the differences in a general way. But also like say that I think the school system tries to get everyone to like be on the same level, like know the same things. And to me, that's just completely crazy. I mean, people are different and our lives are different. So obviously we'll need different things. And also, what's really important to me is that not only do we need different things, but we also want different things. Like we wish for different things. And to me, I always say that unschooling kind of lies on, like, there's like three or it stands on three legs, we could say that way. So it's to me, it's freedom and respect and faith or confidence. So not faith in the religious way, but like being confident in what happens. So to expand a bit on the 3, just quickly. So freedom for me, obviously, is like the first and foremost important one. And it's kind of the biggest leg, because the other one kind of comes, tags on to that. But to me, that's about, we are all free spirits, we're all free souls. That's how we're born, that's how we come into this world, like sovereign beings, and no one is supposed to rule over us, like no other human being, right? So we all have this God-given right of freedom from birth, and we come into the world with that. And so that's like, that's the biggest thing, right? And then after that comes the respect, which to me is the respect of that freedom. You respect the person, you respect the way the person is built. So we're not all alike. Again, like some of us are like heads in the clouds and all over the place all the time and being impulsive, and you know, we can't focus on one thing. We need to do 10 things at a time, or we need to jump up and down, and all we want to do is just run around and run wild and la la la, which is great. And other people are like more calm or posed, more like reflective. They like to plan everything in advance. They like to know what's going to happen. They like to look at option A, B, C, D, and, you know, before they do anything or whatever. I mean, which is also fine and good. It's just different, right? So in the school system, you don't tailor to that. You can't, like, you're just, there's this one way of being and of learning, and you have to fit into that box. And if you don't, well, then you start having all the problems with being pinpointed as, oh, you have a problem. You probably had this or that, or there's this issue that we need to work on, and but like, it's because of you, right? It's nothing else. It's because of you. You can't function here in this system. So with unschooling, you're out of that system. You're out of those boxes. So you can just look at the person and just respect the person's personality and the way that the person is wired, like from nature's side, right? And then the last leg, or the last kind of English is so bad today. Anyway, the last thing is confidence, or what I call faith. So it's, to me, it's like faith in what is, faith in the future, faith in what is, just trusting. You could call it trust, actually, that's better. Yeah. Trusting in the process, trusting in what is, and trusting that learning happens, even when we don't like structure it and formalize it and put it in boxes, and even when we don't make a conscious effort. And this brings us back to what we started with, of doing nothing. So even if we don't do a lot of things to make sure that learning happens, it still happens. But, and that's what sometimes difficult for a lot of people, is it might not be the learning that you thought was going to happen. It might not be the learning that you want to happen. And that is why, like, you'll hear people say like, yeah, but I mean, if I don't make him do this or that, he's not going to do it. Well, no, maybe he's not going to do it. But that's the whole point. That's the whole thing with unschooling is, well, that's okay. He has a right to not do that. And also, there's no use in him doing it if he doesn't want to, because if he doesn't want to do it, there's no motivation. And if the motivation isn't there, well, then either it's not useful to the person or it's not interesting. And in that case, you know, you'd really have to ask, why the hell would you have to learn it then? I mean, if you don't find it interesting and you don't need it in your life, why would you have to learn it, right? Yeah. Because no one is going to not want to learn something that they need, that they really need in their lives, right? That's just a human condition. We all want to be like autonomous. We all want to be able to like live our lives on our own. We don't want to be dependent and need someone else to like help us out all the time. Yeah. To me, that's my belief. It's a human condition. We all want to be autonomous and like self-governed, self-sufficient. So we want community, right? But we want like a free choice community. We want to choose the people that we spend time with, and we want to choose why and how and the activities that we do. And so, but we don't want to be dependent on someone because we can't do anything else, right?
Yeah.
So to me, that's, I mean, and that's also what I've seen over all the years, like with my own kids, but also with all the other kids that I've met during all these years. It's like, they do not want to learn. Of course they do. It's just we as the adult, we need to learn to let go of our expectation of what they were supposed to be doing, what they were supposed to learn. And also, how does learning look, right? It doesn't always look like sitting with your nose in a book at a table, doing some kind of whatever. That's what school has taught us learning looks like and should look like. But it doesn't. It just, learning just happens. It's there. It's all the time, all around us all the time. And you can't like define when it happens, how it should happen, or why it should happen, like through what means, etc. We just need to, like, it's, learning is free, right? Completely free.
Yeah.
It's so interesting with the whole box system. Well, we both went to school for many years, right?
Yeah.
Many years, and we want to be free. And now we are out traveling and has been doing that for almost a year and a half, free of almost every kind of box. But it still sneaks in once in a while that I want things a certain way, and I feel a little bit guilty when I'm not doing what I used to do, and when I watch other people what they're doing, and I'm like, oh, I should be doing that too. So it sneaks in because I've been so indoctrinated with that things should be like this, otherwise you will lose this game of life, right? So it's the control is like yeah. So that's really it's really interesting, and I'm starting to do the same as you, like unschool yourself, and you have also unjobbing too. So what does it look like? And it doesn't have to look like that. You can do it your own way.
But also like the faith thing, like like trusting that everything will fall into its proper place when you let go, and like, because it's so like, we're not, right now we're in a place in Spain, and we've been given this place to be while we're going on the next house sit, and we feel like I should be doing something. I should be, because that's our whole childhood and young adulthood, and adulthood is like, then you have to do this, you have to go to a job.
Otherwise you're lazy,
and instead of like, this is a really nice place, we should just be enjoying ourselves right now. And like our whole journey has been about relaxing our nervous system, because we've been fighting against the system for so long, and now we're in a place where we can actually do it, and it's still like
yeah, but I think that those things are just so deep in all of us. And what you're talking about, Katrine, is the deschooling process, which is a really, it's like a lifelong process, I think, because like most of us went to school ourselves, and we also had parents who raised us in, you know, a certain way. And we have society all around us, and society, all these things, we carry them along, and to kind of free ourselves from all that it's a huge work. And I personally think it never ends, because there's always something new, there's always a new layer. Like, I like to compare it to an onion, and there's like, it's always a new, it's just a huge onion, and it keeps being layers that you can peel off. And I think also in terms of like parenting and unschooling, it's like, so I often think, like, I've been in this for very long now, for 2 decades, and yet there are still things where I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I just thought that or said that, or why is this so hard for me, and etc., because things keep popping up. So granted, a lot less and less, and I have done a huge work of deschooling, but still, like, so I have a 12-year-old today. I mean, I've had 3 other 12-year-olds, but I've never had him. he's never been 12-year-old, and next year he's going to be 13, and I've never had him as a 13-year-old. And my daughter also, you know, see what I mean? I've never, that is the condition we all have, is that life evolves and life happens, and we've never been at this particular point in our life before. So obviously you can still have things that pop up, even if you've worked on yourself and with all this for many, many years. So I think that's very, very interesting too. And I was thinking of something when you were talking, Mjølner, is that our society in general, and so do you know the book called Unschooling Society by I don't know how you pronounce his name, Ivan Illich something. Well, anyway, it's a very interesting little book. It was written like in the 50s or 60s or something. And he talks about how the schooling paradigm just permeates the whole society. And I totally agree, because that is what happens. School, like, just reaches out to all parts of society, because we're all schooled in the beginning. So we're schooled, and you called it indoctrinated, which is the same thing. You know, we're all told what to do and how to think, which is, so I'm hesitating a bit, because it's funny, because like, especially in Denmark, the school system like prides itself in being, you have to learn to think for yourself. Yeah, and you have to like learn to be, you know, independent and all that. And I just kind of find it funny that you would place people in a system that literally tells them what to do, when to do it, and how to do it, and like where to be at what point in life, like what to reach. So by 8 years old, you should be doing this. By 10 years old, you should be doing that. And also tell people, kids, all the time to think about the next step. We don't encourage people to be in the present. We don't encourage them to learn to just go with the flow of life, which is completely opposite to trust, which is one of the 3 legs in unschooling, right? It's the trusting. And the school paradigm is completely opposite. That's a control paradigm, because we want to control everything. We want to control people, first of all, that keep them in the box. And we want to control the outcome. We want to make sure. So, which is also funny, because that's also one of the things that people ask a lot about unschooling is, so how do you make sure that they'll learn what they're supposed to learn? Like, and in that, just that one question lies so much. So first of all, how do I make sure? Well, I don't make sure, because how could I? I mean, I'm not the one learning. So I don't make sure of anything. Like, the only thing that I make sure of is that I try to be the best version of myself. And of course, I make sure that, you know, we have stuff to do, that my kids have access to things, to people, to experiences, to activities, all that. I make sure of all that, you know, that we have a nice life, like an active, agreeable, happy, trying to be happy, joyful life, because I really think when you put that first, I mean, things tend to just, you know, come along and flow along, and learning just happens even better. So yeah, so I don't make sure that they learn, because I can't. But also, how do I make sure that they learn what they're supposed to learn? Well, I don't, because there's nothing they're supposed to learn. That's the thing. They aren't supposed to learn anything. Yeah, but what about reading and writing? I mean, they do have to learn that, don't they? Well, no, they don't have to learn to read and write. I mean, that's completely, I mean, they have the freedom. They could choose to not learn that, but that's not going to happen, because the society where we are, because we don't live out in the jungle. I think if we lived like in a tribe out in the jungle somewhere, I don't think it matters a lot that you can read. I mean, I think maybe it would be much better for you to know like what plants are poisonous, where can you find a lot of fish, or, you know, how do you build a shelter, or what, I don't know, whatever. But just to say that it's context based. So obviously you don't have to learn, but they will, because in our society where we are, reading is an essential skill. And which brings me back to what we talked about in the beginning, because it's essential, obviously they're going to want to learn it, and they're going to learn it because it's essential. So, I mean, to me, it's just logic, really, right? But because we've all been, like you so brilliantly put it, indoctrinated, and we've all been formed in our brains by the school thinking, by the school paradigm, we think now, I mean, people in general, the society thinks that children will only learn if you make sure they do, if you direct it, if you force them, if you tell them to.
Hmm.
And I understand that people think this way, because it's true when what you want them to learn is something specific. Yeah, if you have an idea that I want my kid to learn this, and he doesn't want to, or she doesn't want to, yeah, then you are going to need to direct it, structure it, force them, push it, bribe them, whatever, because that's just a normal human functioning. Again, if you want something like someone to do something that they don't willingly choose to do, you are going to need some sort of leverage. And that's what the school system is built on. Because if you set it all free, the problem is then you're going to have all these free people, and they're not going to be the same. They're going to, someone's going to know this, another one's going to know that, and they're not going to know what the other one knew, and blah, 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 right? And so that's what messes the whole thing up, right? So it's a premise that's different, I think, and that's why it's so hard for people to get into the entire unschooling mindset, because it's literally putting everything upside down. It's literally thinking about learning and, by extension, human relations in general in a completely different way, which we're not used to, because our society is a control society. It is.
Just had an epiphany.
Yeah, I'm having epiphanies right now, because so when we were children, we were taught, so what do you want to be when you grow up?
Yeah.
So you can choose between these, let's just say arbitrary 10 things, but you can only choose between these 10 things. And many of the things that we could choose between as growing up, or many of the things that exist now, it's not something that we could choose between when growing up. It's like, not that necessarily Elon Musk or any of those other tech guys are something to be looked up to, maybe not, but those things were not available, and they invented those things. And why did they invent them? Because they were, many of them were schooled in a more free way and they invented those positions, those things, and we are coming into a completely different world right now. Like, we cannot imagine the future we are moving into in a very, very short time. Like, things are going to explode, things are going to get crazy and wild, and there's going to be a lot of things available that we cannot imagine right now. And if we can only choose between becoming a butcher or a high school teacher and taking an education that points us in exactly those ways, or maybe like a bricklayer or something, we are not going to have the people that are skilled to do those things in the future we're moving into. That can only be people who are self-directed and who can pick up different kinds of learning. And you cannot do that in that school system that we have right now. And the school system, if you look at it, it's exactly the same as 150 years ago. They're not learning very much new stuff. It's so it has to be self-directed. It has to be open-ended, because the world we're moving into is open.
Yeah, and we see a lot of new inventions coming out of African countries, and that's young people or even kids up with these inventions to save their whole village, right? So I think you cannot stop the learning process. It's built in, right?
I mean, humans are literally wired to learn.
Curious. We want to explore, and we want to figure things out, and we want to help other people. So you cannot stop it.
And talking about curiosity, I mean, if there's one thing that the school system is really good at, it's killing curiosity, because we've been like, you have to learn this way and you have to learn that. And it's like, okay, at some point the children are going to stop being curious about things, because it's been,
From 1 o'clock to 2
so
o'clock, we do
boring
this. Yeah,
learning.
we all, our generation, we all know, we all have that experience. Put up your hand and say, why do I need to learn this? And the teacher don't have an answer, right?
Yeah, because you have to.
Because you just have to just shut up and sit down and just listen to me. And people you were falling asleep through your whole school.
I slept through school.
Yeah.
And I still managed to get.
Yeah, or you draw, or you just like tune out. And
Yeah.
I mean, I think also like, so either they'll say this, or the other thing is, well, you might need it someday. That's also something that's, and that brings us back to the control again, like trying to control the outcome. Like we want to make sure, and I think that's just like a general misunderstanding again in society, that we can or even should control life. I mean, that we can. So it's so funny, because at the same time we have all these sayings going around that, oh well, life happens and you don't know what happens and you can't control life. We say it, but we don't. Our society isn't built that way. We don't live that way. It doesn't like reflect it, right? Because the entire system is built on trying to control an outcome, like whatever you level you look at it. And especially school is that way. It's hypothetically, you might need this, so we need to teach it to you in advance, because you might need it someday. Whereas, so, instead of just saying, well, I'll cross that bridge when I get there, if I need this. But that's again because there's this idea that, well, we all are going to need more or less the same thing. So we're going to try to, like, people have to be quite alike. So they'll likely need some of like the same things. It's again this one size fits all mindset that lies at the bottom of that. And that really is why unschooling is so uncomfortable to a lot of people, is because there's the element of not knowing. It's the trust. And while we're talking, I'm actually thinking, so I said freedom is the most important one, but actually trust is too. I mean, that because letting go and saying, well, we'll see what happens. And then, we'll react to that once it does, and we'll just take it as it comes, etc. That's a huge leap of faith. Because again, like, well, what if they don't? What if they never, ever? Or what if they always? Like, it's things that come up, So you have this kid who's not interested in reading, etc. And usually it's like, often it's going to be boys until they're about 10 or something. I mean, a lot of young boys don't have a lot of interest in sitting down and learning to read. They might have an interest in reading, actually, but they won't at all have an interest in learning to read. And it's not a stereotype, but it's something we see quite often, really, that often boys are more like that than girls. But anyway, so you'll have this kid, and then you'll look at them and you'll go, oh, but what if they never learn to read? I mean, and then, so they're like, so in the school system, let's not even talk about that, because we all know how they handle that. But so in an unschooling setting in a family, talking about the deschooling process for the parent. So what we then need to do is take a deep breath and look at the child and say, oh, well, it's all going to come. It's once he needs to read, he's going to learn to read. And once he wants to, etc. Okay, yeah, that's all fine and good for a lot of people, as long as the kid is like 7, 8, at 9. Most people start to worry a bit. At 10, 11, oh my goodness. And then that's when all these things creep in. Like, what if he never learns to read?
Yeah.
And then comes the desire to control and the outcome. And it's not bad necessarily. It's what we want to make sure that, I mean, as parents, we want to do the best, and it often springs from an intention of, well, I don't want my kid to end up like, like an illiterate who can't do anything, who's going to be dependent on us because he can't read or whatever. I mean, but all these things start brewing in our heads, and it just spins out of control like in no time, because we start those are all hypotheses. Those are all things we don't know shit, right? We don't know what's gonna happen. And so that's both a blessing and a curse, and something that we need to learn to work with, that we don't know. We need to learn to just rest in that and just trust that it's going to be okay. So we need to work on the philosophy of, like, the side to it that is saying, well, it's okay to learn to read late, or even pushing it and saying, well, what if he never learned to read? Would that be okay? I mean, well, it all depends, right? I guess. I mean, of course it's okay. I mean, but I mean, what if the person becomes an athlete, like a sports person or something, that he doesn't really need to read, maybe, or something else, whatever, a baker, whatever, something. What if the person has a perfectly happy and good life, can pay their bills, you know, they're just being self-sufficient, and they have a nice life, and they are happy with their lives, but they don't really know how to read. I mean, now I'm just, you know, brainstorming and hypothesizing a bit, right? But what if they did? So what if their life were okay in their own terms? Well, then would it be okay that they never learned to read? I mean, maybe it would, right? But that's like an exercise that we need to do with ourselves, is to push these what ifs all the way and see where it takes us, to like learn to work on these things, because we all have a set of values. We all have something that we consider necessary, good, right, etc. And that's what we really need to work on for our own deschooling process, and for unschooling with our kids to really work and function. And by that I mean to run smoothly and not be filled with conflicts or worries on the side of the parents, because usually the kids don't worry too much. I mean, yeah, when they become bigger, they do start to sometimes like think more about things, think more about learning, in a, how would you say that, like in a way where you are actually aware that you're thinking about it. Because small kids, they don't even think about it. They just live and they just learn. They don't think about it. They aren't really aware that they're learning, because they're just living and doing what they love and doing what they're like engulfed in their interest, and you don't think about it. But then when you become a little bit bigger and a little bit older, and you start thinking about maybe joining like some kind of education or a school somewhere, or because I mean, yeah, I mean, schools aren't all bad. I mean, compulsory schooling is bad, right? But obviously we can choose to enter a school setting of some kind. And if we choose to do that because we think it's going to help us reach a goal, it's going to benefit us in some way, well, then that's all fine and good, right? That's completely different to being put in a compulsory setting and being told, this is what you need to do, and how and why, etc. And being very young also. Yeah. Where was I going with all that? I kind of lost my. Anyway, that's what happens in conversations like this.
Yeah. Our daughter, she's 10 now, and like 2 years ago, she was in this special needs school, and we had a lady, let's just call her a brain expert. We had her look at Lue, our daughter, and interview all the people around her, the teachers, the caretakers, everyone around her, so to figure out how her brain works and what she actually needs.
Yeah, what would be the optimal setting for her?
Yeah, in at home and in school and everywhere. And after a year, the conclusion was that we should just make sure that she thrives both at home and in school, and learn the basic things, how to take care of herself and stuff. I was like, shouldn't that like be for everyone?
Yeah.
What about all the other kids with normal brains?
Because she's
Yeah.
special needs, then she just needs to have a good life.
Yeah.
If she'd been normal,
Yeah.
she wouldn't need to have a good life.
No. So thriving
Yeah.
wouldn't be in the picture. Now it's just like we should just make sure that she really thrives when she's at school and just be kind of happy. So
Yeah.
And
but
That's
not other people, not our son, for example, right? And then we have a really good friend, and she used to work as a social worker. And she had a conversation with a woman who worked at a place where like grown-ups, but special needs grown-ups, what it's called, where they live, with their caretakers around them, and they make sure that they're all right. And because there had been reports of them using force on them, and our friend, she asked them, so why do you need to use force on this man, this young man? Because he doesn't want to get up in the morning. So, but does he have to get up in the morning? Yes, because he needs to go to work, because the bus arrives and everyone should get in the bus and go to this place where they paint silk scarves. That's the only thing they were doing. And our friend, she was like, but why? Because there's no one home to take care of him. But then you could like change that, right? He cannot do anything. Lue, shh, can you just, thank you. Our daughter, she's talking very loudly. Everyone agreed that this young man, he had a brain damage so bad that he couldn't do anything, right?
Well, not
anything yet,
but like a normal job,
right? And he needed some help to take care of himself. But he was aware enough in the morning that he said, I don't want to get up now. And I don't want to get to this job. But the lady taking care of him, she was so much in the box. She was like, no, just because you're special need, you are not allowed to get out of the box, right? You should go to work like everyone else, because that's the
only... Should be uncomfortable like everyone else.
Yeah. That's what we're supposed to do. Get up in the morning, go to your work,
go to a shitty job,
come home again,
be unhappy. And
they needed to force him, like use force, so it was reported. But she was like, I was right. Our friend, she was like, no, you need to change this, so just leave him, because he says, and that's the respect. Just respect that he doesn't want to go to the shitty. Just because you're having a shitty job doesn't mean that he has to, right?
Yeah.
No, you're not getting out of this just because your brain doesn't work.
Yeah, no, it's crazy, and I think that kind of really leads back to the whole idea of like, how do we view humans and people? Because there's this idea in society that we can and should and even have the right, like some people have the right to decide over others, and it's the entire view of the human being that has to change in that way, because that is how society is built, and that is how parenting is built too. I mean, that's how we start out that way, with parents being we have a sort of duty and right to decide over our kids, because we are the parents, right? So we know better, and then that's why we have to decide over them. That's the idea that most people come into parenting with, and I think that's actually an interesting idea to challenge as well. Is this entire idea of do we even have the right to decide over another human being, like as a basis idea, right? Does that make sense? I think that's an interesting idea to explore, and it's like, when you start thinking about that, it actually helps you really expand your perspectives. It's really, really interesting. It's huge subject to get into as well, but I think it's important for unschooling too, because if you want your unschooling life to like work and function. And again, by that I mean have a nice life that flows and that's not filled with stress and conflicts and, you know, back and forth and worries. And I think we need to learn to let go of a lot of things. And one of those things is the need and the perceived right that we think we have to decide over our children, right?
Yeah, it's
I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It's really interesting. And I'm
because
sure
it is what carries the thing, right? It is what carries. If I think that I ultimately have the right to decide for my child or over my child, well, then obviously I'm going to react and think in different ways than if I don't think that way, right? If I think I don't have that right. And is that making sense or not? Mjølner is looking.
To me, I'm just having this thought that it must, like, if you look at basically any other animal than humans, they are almost able to survive from the very beginning. But like our small humans, when they come out, they cannot fend for themselves, they cannot feed themselves, they are putting themselves in, like, for the first couple of years they easily put themselves in very, very dangerous positions. So there is this guardianship where we have to take care of, feed and take care of our small humans. So where is that breaking point? Because and I think that's being, we have overextended that into our whole lives. But
yes,
there's definitely
it's
something
super interesting.
yeah, even in we know in Denmark,
the Mother's Day.
yeah, grown up people,
It's super interesting.
people are calling our government mom and dad.
Because I was gonna say it's super interesting because that's the whole, but it's for your own good. It's for the best. It's for your safety, right? and so I'm not saying I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you. Yeah, we can't let our children just run amok and do whatever. But I mean, why would we? And why would that necessarily be in opposition with consensus and respect and finding mutual solutions and negotiating and talking? I mean, you can still do all those things, but yeah, it's of course there's this side of the guardianship, like you say, but I just think it's really interesting because when we, and obviously we are the adults. I mean, I usually say that, so it's like kind of being captain on a ship. You know, you have a crew, and well, if you really can't find a solution, or if you really can't like find a mutual understanding and agreement, etc., well, someone has to decide at some point, because otherwise it's all gonna like go up in smoke or whatever. So that would be me in the end, because ultimately I have the legal responsibility and like the responsibility, just that's it, you know, because I'm the adult. But that still leaves a lot of space. And I just think we need to be aware of it, because it can super quickly become an excuse, or like we say in Danish, like a pillow, a sleeping pillow. If you think, well, ultimately, anyway, the decision is mine, and you know, it's for your own good. That's it's for your own good because I know better. It's just ideas that are very interesting to pick out and start exploring. That particularly that whole one, that because we're adults we know better. Like, and you were talking before about how society evolves in ways that we don't know, and there's technology now that there wasn't 10 years ago and all that. So do we necessarily know better? And I mean, what is it to know anyway? I mean, it's like really recently, like a lot of people knew a whole damn lot of stuff about a certain V word, right? And do we really know? I mean, and not everyone agrees. So anyway, again, what is it to know, and do we really know better? It's just ideas to explore. And I think that's probably the most important thing for an unschooling life and like a view of life through an unschooling lens is being willing to examine our own beliefs, our own opinions, the viewpoints. I mean, where do they come from? And examine things, explore, throw it up in the air, and toss it around a bit, and not being stuck on one idea.
Yeah.
Like the willingness to explore and to question. Like there's this, I think that's an old hippie slogan or something, isn't it? Like question everything. and I think that's really like why I think this way. Why do I think this way? And that's a super important part of the deschooling process is when I think something, why do I think it? Hang on, why do I think this way? Like I used to have a huge beef with kids moving around furniture and turning it up and down, like when they were small. And it's like literally all they did all the time was like, they couldn't just sit on a chair. It had to be turned around and climbed on. And you're looking, because I know it's completely, but that was something I had with me from my childhood, which was a childhood that was really like that. And like you had to sit like this in the living room because, dust and blah. So I came from this, and I knew I didn't want that. So like on the superficially, I would allow my kids to overturn the furniture and all that, but I would be like, and I couldn't and it was hard for me. and I would burst out and like, oh my God, why can't you just sit still? I mean, why can't we just use a chair for what it's supposed to be used for? No, there we go. There's supposed to. I mean, who the hell decided that a chair is only to sit on? I mean, why wouldn't it be to turn over and be a pirate ship or whatever? But I had to work so hard with that to like question, hey, hang on, why do I have this huge beef with this? Why is it so important to me that you don't turn over chairs and you don't move around furniture? And where does all this come from? And so obviously I found out that it's not because it's like it makes a mess, or you might break the chair. Those are all things that I told myself and my kids, but that wasn't at all it was just something that I had internalized from my own childhood. This is not how we do it. That's not good.
Me walking in the
I will never allow shoes on the furniture. Never. Not at least not in the bed, and not on the couch. It's like no shoes on.
When we were just
and I know
in the beginning of our relationship, we lived in China, and I was just walking in and out with shoes on because I grew up in the countryside, and
I did too.
Yeah, grew up with that, and he was like, oh, shoes inside. What? Yeah. What's the problem? It's like, no, you don't do that.
Yeah.
So, and wash your hands.
And it's interesting to explore, huh? Why is that? I mean, is it because we're afraid of the bacteria that comes in with it, or is it because that's just like a bit like it's a rude way of being? That's you're not very intelligent, maybe, if you do that, because you're not very educated. I don't know what kinds of ideas could be tied to that. Those are the poor people doing that, or there could be so many things tied to an idea. And why is it? And it's interesting because it's not to say that, I mean, it's perfectly fine to have a belief or an idea, an opinion that is, I do not want shoes don't come inside my house with shoes on or whatever. It's fine. We just need to examine all the ideas, especially when they cause conflict, like with our kids or with another person or a partner or whatever, or within ourselves. Because conflict is not always with someone else. Conflict is also when we just walk around and we sit on needles and we can't sit still and we can't find peace because someone is doing or saying whatever. So what is going on inside of me? I really need to pull out all my shadows and pull off all these layers on my onion to find out what is really going on. And I think the more we do that, the more we question, the wider the box becomes, the wider our perception and the wider our mental becomes, our mental space, the space that we have, that we are capable of holding for other people, the space that we are capable of allowing other people to roam inside and roam free inside, because obviously, I mean, we all have a box, right? It's just a question of how big it is, and a box can be very, very, very big, and it can also be very, very, very small. And I think it's just it's really interesting when you look back at your own process and your own journey, and you can see where you have literally made like huge leaps, where you're like, oh my God, I used to be like that. I used to think that. I used to not be able to support like at all. I couldn't stand this. And now, you know, I don't even notice it. Or I think it's super interesting, and I really like it. I like, because I mean, I used to actually be someone with a lot of very set ideas. I used to be very dogmatic, black and white person. I know it can be hard to believe, but it was actually that way. I had a lot of, you don't do that, digger manic in Danish, right? The whole, that's not, it's so funny to think back at, because I've really come a long way in that, and it's been very interesting, and it has all been about doing my own shadow work and pulling apart all these ideas and beliefs and things, and where are they from? Where do they stem from? And it's, you know, the childhood and your history, your background, all of these things, the societal, cultural norms and narratives, the things that we tell each other, because we tell each other so many things all the time. We say things all the time that just keep perpetuating these stories, right?
Yeah.
As a society, that's what we do. We entertain it, and we keep them going, these stories. So that's also why a lot of people find it hard to live outside the box and to do something else, because you can feel really lonely and, well, scary then, because you're alone, and also the outside world keeps reminding you of that box that you've stepped out of, and you know, come back into the warm box, you know, what we say. Sorry.
You're done with fooling around. Now you have learned that this is the best way. We have done this for thousands of years, and we are right. Just come back here. And if you cannot take the traumatizing, then there's something wrong with you, and you need some pharmaceuticals.
Yeah.
That's the way we handle
and they're really, really trying to make it almost impossible to step out of the box. Like, even though there's plenty of space outside the box, I mean, the whole economic financial system, the everything, like, you need an address, you need paperwork, you need this digital ID, you need driver's license. Like, that's not even a thing. Those, like, driver's license are not
to pay
a thing.
Taxes.
You need you need to pay half of everything you make to the state, so we can have wars. I mean,
but a ton of people are working on that right now, and the box will break within a few years. So that's really good.
But it's really
great news for everyone.
There's huge cracks in it already.
Yeah.
Huge.
Yeah. I'm interested in, so what are your kids learning right now? What are they doing?
What are they having fun with?
Yeah, what are they interested
in? So like right these days, so I have one kid who's actually taking a lot to ice skating, and that's something that's really huge, and she just wants to ice skate all the time. Roller skate, which obviously is like the same thing off ice, so to practice. So that's a huge thing. This kid is really, in general, very creative, like draws and paints, and at a point she also had a sewing machine, and she was sewing her own clothes. I can never say that word right, but making her own clothes. And so she's very creative. And so right these days it's mostly ice skating, which is actually a bit complicated, because so that becomes something that, so because we travel, right? And so where should we go and all that, and that becomes a very important factor in where can we actually go and where are we choosing to go, because we need to be close to an ice skating rink so that she can actually do those things, because that's what I think the unschooling is about. It's about supporting the interests when they are there. So it's about looking at your kid and helping with resources and opportunities and all that, and supporting, you know, the interest in whatever way is possible, and that they wish, right? So that's the role, but the role is not teaching. The role is not saying, oh, you showed an interest in this, let me sign you up for this course, and then we should do this, and then we'll do that, and then you can, and then because you can do that. You can fall into that trap and start structuring and formalizing and planning ahead, and because you want a certain outcome. But you can also just like take it as it comes and see where it goes, and there might be a need for that, you know, at some point. When a kid has an interest in something, but I think it's something that you just, again, you just go with the flow and you see where it leads, because an interest can last for 2 days or 3 years or an hour or whatever, and it can also come and go in like waves, right? So yes, that's one of them. And then I have another kid who's well, he's like he's become over the past few years like a complete gamer, really like a complete gamer. That's gaming is his thing, and it's literally so if you looked at it, you could look at it and say, well, it's literally all he does. It's not, but it's a huge percentage of what he does and his day, or nights even, which is again actually a funny thing to start diving into, because in the beginning I used to have a problem with that, with sitting up at night, because I used to be like, nights are for sleeping, days are for being awake, you know. And I had to work through a lot there too, because there's a lot of things that pops up, right? It's like, will I look like a bad parent? What if someone finds out that he sits up at night? You know, that would be something I could think. Or even like, I don't think it's healthy. I mean, you should be sleeping at night and then be awake in the day, and lots of things, right? Lots of things. And then the whole thing around gaming and computers and screens, and oh, it's not healthy and good to spend so much time and blah 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 blah. So there's just a lot of layers in that, and it's still a learning process for me, because there's so many things, you know. But it's really interesting for me also to watch what happens, how he learns, how much he learns. And actually what does happen is that he has a group of friends, which they are all in different countries. So some of them sit in England, some of them are in the States. They are also traveling families, some of them. So I don't know, they might be somewhere else, etc. But the main point being that they are this group of friends, and we've met during our travels. So one we met in Mexico, the others we met in Spain, and they've kept in contact. And they've really, over the years, built a very solid friendship. And they have this friends group of, not sure how many they are, maybe 5, 6, I don't know, a small group of friends. And they meet up every single day, all night. And they just have a blast. I mean, they do what friends do. I mean, they hang out, they talk, they work together, they do projects together in their games, they build stuff. Sometimes they just spend time just doing what I would personally qualify as completely brain dead gaming kind of things, where you just like, I don't know, shooting at whatever, you know, something where again I will have some sort of value judgment over it. And but it's very, very different. And at other times they'll be looking up stuff, you know, on the internet, looking up information, teaching each other stuff, not because of, oh, okay, now I'm going to teach you this. No, that's not how it happens. It just happens. They tell each other things, they look things up, they work, they collaborate to find out things. So it's interesting, right? Because they have everything that's in school. They just don't have the teachers saying, well, do this. It's not structured, right? It just flows.
Right?
They
communicate in English.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, except when sometimes they communicate in Danish because someone has decided they want to learn Danish. At one point, two of his friends, my son's friends, actually started doing Duolingo in Danish, or was it something else? But anyway, they started doing something, and they wanted to learn like a bit of Danish. I've heard them dabble with other languages too because they just think it's fun, etc. So yeah, a lot of things come up naturally, and things come up in the game. And like you said in the beginning, you know, I don't know where he knows this from about the olives and blah blah blah. And that is what you experience as a parent. So a parent that has a child in the school system will also experience that. It's more like we just do it full time. We just see it full time, how learning just happens all the time. And all my kids will come and tell me things, and I'll be like, where the hell did you find out that? I mean, where did you know that from? And you know, they'll tell you stuff. And so this particular kid also, like, he really loves animals, and he'll always find out, like just yesterday he came and told me about an animal called a quagga or something. I've never heard of it before. It's like, looks like a squirrel or something, or between a squirrel and a koala or something, and it's like indigenous to Australia. And he was telling me about all that, and there you have it again. It's like yeah, that wasn't on a curriculum. It wasn't like me sitting down thinking, oh, now, you know, go look up everything, you know, go look up this about a quagga, or what's the name of the animal in, and you know, that's just not how it functioned. And I'm gonna say, in the beginning, when you start your unschooling journey, that is actually something you need to be a bit aware of, because we're so eager to see this learning happen and to document it and to, you know, show, you see, that works, you know, so we can kind of jump on that, and we can kind of hijack the process really quickly. Okay, so let's say that he comes and shows me that, and then just to illustrate a bit too, like the difference in mindset between unschooling and homeschooling is that in a homeschooling, from a homeschooling angle, you would be likely to think, oh, there's an interest. I'll find a worksheet about quaggas. I'll tell him to calculate how many quaggas can be in a cage of this size if blah, 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 you know, that's, and then build, you know, that's build on the interest. But that is really homeschooling. That is not unschooling. That is homeschooling. That is taking the traditional, structured, formalized approach to learning. So I'm not saying you can't do worksheets. I'm not saying you can't, but he might actually, of his own, like, go and find a quiz on the internet about quaggas or whatever, you know. But yeah, I don't know if that makes sense, but it's really actually quite clear, that difference. So yeah, so I'm not going to I'm also not going to ask him, like, later on to, like, check up, like, in 2 weeks, does he remember this or that fact about a quagga? Because it's not interesting. I mean, all that matters is that it was interesting in the moment. He learned something in the moment, and he might not ever need that knowledge again. And if we don't need it, then why should we hang on to it, right? So that's also, you know, that's actually, that leads to another of these beliefs and these things that we can explore, these concepts. What is it to learn something? I mean, because if I was in school, I learned German. Yeah, right. It's like, okay. I once had a job interview, and she was like, do you speak German? Yeah, yes. Okay, so where did you learn German? And I had to go like, oh, indeed, in der Schule, because my mind was like going, oh, then I have to, like, turn that other word because it's die Schule, but it has, and I had to do all that and I had to think to say in der Schule. And then she said, oh, how many years did you do German? And I had to count on my damn fingers and go, 1, 2, 3, 5 Jahre. You know, so I'm like, yeah, right, I speak German. I learned German. No, I was taught German. I was exposed, I force-fed and taught German, but I didn't learn it, not at all. Yeah. Whereas on the other hand, I was taught French, but I speak that fluently because I was interested, and I did do a few, like, I did go to a youth school, and one, you know, something we have in Denmark for older kids, like a Well, anyway, I did take some lessons, and then I lived in France, and I studied on my own, etc., etc. So, but I didn't have French as a subject in school, right? And you can go that way with a lot of things. There's so many things that like I had a conversation on Facebook the other day that really like you just spun out of like really quickly. But it was precisely about that, about people saying, well, you shouldn't homeschool because you can't obviously be like, you can't possibly be capable of teaching your children everything that's in the, 9th grade curriculum. And I'm like, well, first of all, shouldn't you be? Because didn't you go to the 9th grade? So theoretically, you were taught these things. So shouldn't you know them? Well, no, because it's been so long. So I mean, how would I remember? Well, what does that tell you about that learning? Yeah, well, blah, blah, blah. And people just don't see that. And then they're like, well, anyway, even if it's not the same as being able to teach it. And I would say, well, I'm sorry. I mean, everything that I master, I can teach to someone else. I can help them, because again, my understanding of teaching, I mean, it's like I can help someone learn. If I master something, a skill, I have a knowledge, of course I can pass it on. And she was like, oh, that's so arrogant. You think you can pass on, you think you can teach all the subjects in the 9th grade. And I was like, that's not at all what I said. I said, whatever I master, I can pass on, because I was precisely trying to make this, well, you didn't actually learn everything you thought you did obviously, huge things, so many things that people don't remember, right?
If we look at it like we'd look at a normal life with like possessions and stuff like that, we went on the first trip on the first journey, we went to a place and helped out some people, and they were hoarders. They had all this shit lying around that they had absolutely no use for, and it was growing stale, and it was ruining their place of living. Like, it was just lying around. That's basically what we're doing with that form of education that we're being forced into. Like, everyone should have a lawnmower and a set of hammers and all of this. Like, what if I don't even have a lawn? Why should I have a lawnmower? It's like, why should everyone have a lawnmower? How about just one guy in the neighborhood has a lawnmower, and then when we need the lawnmower, we go to the guy who has the lawnmower, and he's feeling useful because he has the lawnmower and he can help out everyone. We don't all need to have a lawnmower. And the same thing with, like, we don't all need to be speaking German. It's great that there are people who can't speak German when we need to communicate with Germans.
Or fix a car.
But not everyone needs to fix a car. Like, I didn't know anything about cars before we went on this journey, but I've had to learn because this thing breaks down sometimes.
And you are learning from other people on the internet.
Who knows?
And I can there's something wrong, and they're right back. Okay, so it could be this and that, and then they make a video for him. Then you do this and that, and
then you go test it.
I love that. That's so amazing.
Yeah. But until now, I have never had any need for that. And I have never, ever in my whole life had any need how to analyze a fucking text. Never.
No.
And I spent so much time in school learning to analyze texts and knowing about being estranged from society and blah, blah, blah.
I still have that trauma 30 years later. In high school, we were analyzing a text, and I said, this is what the author meant. This is it. And no, it's wrong. I was like, no, I know I'm right. Can we discuss this? No. What all the other kids and he agreed on, that was the right thing. It's like, no. And we even saw that there was this guy who wrote a book, and someone on Wikipedia wrote that his intention with this text was this and that. And then the author wrote back, no, I'm the author, and this was not my intention at all. And he had to write to Wikipedia, and they wouldn't change it.
The Wikipedia wouldn't change it.
Wow.
But this guy, some strange guy had analyzed the text and come to this conclusion. Like,
It's
How
Wow.
insane is this?
Yeah. so
Yeah.
yeah.
And how much of our knowledge that we have gotten in school have proven to be absolutely wrong. Like I know in like I took like high level physics in high school, and my teacher, and like it was a part of an exams, like whether there was any ice left on the moon because of evaporation, and we're like, no, because of so and so long time, all like if there had been any water left on the moon, it would all have evaporated now, even though it turned to ice. And this was like he was like teaching at university level. So and then later they found out I don't believe in any of this stuff anymore anyway. There's fucking ice on the moon.
Yeah.
There is ice on the moon.
I'm just
All this like this is like the top level knowledge of stuff in our society, and it just turns out to be completely wrong.
yeah.
But it's
Yeah.
still in there.
Yeah.
Like, why did I have to learn this? I don't have any use for it.
No, it's just
Junk.
junk
It's
in your
fucking junk.
head. Junk in your head. Yeah.
Junk knowledge.
But you know,
Hoarding.
time is running out here. I just want to ask you, because you have 2 grown-up kids, maybe people want to know if they have accomplished anything in life.
Or they're losers.
Yeah. I love that question. Actually, someone just asked it on Facebook just today, and she was saying, "Oh, I'd love to hear some success stories from grown unschoolers. Can you expand?" And I'm like, "Yeah." So I don't know what you consider success, but I mean, yeah, I have 2 grown kids that yeah, I think so. You said, are they happy? Yeah. So yeah, I think they are pretty happy and pretty content with what they're doing. Yes. But my answer is always, well, they live on their own. They pay their rent. They pay their bills. They wash their clothes. They make food. They show up on their jobs. They have a social network, and yeah, they're like happy bunnies like everyone else. I mean, I mean, like everyone else. I mean, they're not always like, right? Of course, but yeah. So to me, so it's like the thing is that often I think people will expect, well, yes, well, my daughter has a PhD in this or that, and she went there, and my son, so but it's like. And some do. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, and some do. It's just there shouldn't be this expectation that because I sometimes see that like a misconception too for me, that because we unschool, then our kids will end up being special, like do something that you can kind of put up and say, oh, they're going to be much better than everyone, but no more what. But that's not the point. The point is, who cares about the others? The point is not, again, it's not about what it becomes. It's not, the point is not becoming better or more successful or richer or smarter or whatever. That's not the point. The point is just to let them follow their own path, and hopefully well, that would be kind of the only expectation that I have on behalf of my kids, would be that they know, one, that they are free sovereign beings and that no one decides over them, not a government, not no one, and 2, that they are the authors of their own life. If they want something, they can go and get it. So that includes like knowledge. There's a skill and knowledge, something you feel that you lack, well, then go learn it, go grab the knowledge, get the skill, instruct yourself. That they know that, because that's empowering. They don't need a teacher to tell them what they need to in their own. I mean, that's my expectation and my hope and my wish for my kids with unschooling and parenting in general. So that would be kind of the only, the only thing that I would say when I'm asked, but you must have some sort of expectations of it. Yeah, that.
Yeah.
But that's about it, and literally nothing else. I mean, yeah, have a happy life. Like myself, I want a happy life.
Yeah. Well, I love that.
Let's end on that.
Let's end on that.
Let's end on that. Yeah.
You're
That was
so
amazing. That was really great.
Yeah.
We should do it again though, because I feel like there are like tons of the thing I think with these subjects is that there's so many, you know, rabbit holes and so many little paths that you can explore more, so many concepts. And yeah, it's true that for me it's something that I really love. It's really like I really feel like a nerd in that sense. Like I really love. Can you say that in English?
You do
Learning.
online courses for parents, and you also you do unjobbing
Yeah,
courses.
let's talk about unjobbing another time.
Workshops.
I'd love that.
Yeah.
So we'll link to that. And so thank you very much, Luna, for your time.
Thank you for having me, for inviting me. Thank you. And I hope our paths will cross.
Yeah.
Like in real life. Sometime.
Well, we're coming to France, but then you're moving on.
Yeah, we are. But let's see what happens. Because, you know, you never know.
You never know.
Never.
All right. Thank you so much.
I'm just gonna
Thank
stop
you.
recording. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.